don't think any organization sets out to be toxic. It is our responsibility as leaders and administrative leaders to advocate for these nurses. The one thing that I will say to any nurse, you need to hold your power. You are interviewing that organization. They are not interviewing you.
Like, how do we make the CEO and the leadership understand the nurses and vice versa?
I think that we should spend a week in their shoes at the very least. I have a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
I absolutely am a Grey's Anatomy guru. I watch it over and over and over. I'll be grading papers and I have an earbud in and I'm listening to it. Okay?
Welcome to the Nurse on Purpose podcast, where we challenge media stereotypes about nursing and spotlight the incredible and diverse roles nurses play in healthcare. I'm your host, Nello. Every week, I'll be joined by a nurse who is reshaping the narrative. From frontline care to leadership, education, innovation, and beyond. Our aim is to show the world that nursing is so much more than what we see on TV. Together, we'll explore how we can collaborate with media and other stakeholders to create authentic and inspiring portrayals of nurses. Let's begin the conversation and ignite change, one episode at a time.
Welcome back to the Nurse on Purpose podcast. I am your host, Nello. I hope you guys are all doing well. And on today's episode, I have with me a phenomenal nurse entrepreneur, Taylor-Paige Borque. Taylor is a passionate advocate for nurse well-being, and she's the founder of Rise and Restore, an innovative initiative that combats nurse burnout, compassion fatigue, and emotional exhaustion by redefining self-care. Taylor-Paige created this platform after personally experiencing burnout in her own nursing career. She is dedicated to offering sustainable, holistic wellness strategies that empower nurses to prioritize their health without guilt. In addition to her work with Rise and Restore, Taylor is the host of the Rise and Restore Nurse Unseen podcast, where she amplifies the voices of nurses and thought leaders, shedding light on the unique challenges faced by the nursing profession. Taylor, it is my honor to welcome you to the podcast.
Nello, I'm so glad to be here. And I'm blessed to came across your message when you messaged me on LinkedIn, and this is going to be a forever friendship, I can tell.
I love it. Thank you so much. You're such a bright light. I love looking at your posts and reading them because they're so relatable. They're so raw. They're so vulnerable. And I think that's what we really need in nursing today and just in the world. You know, none of the plastic faces, none of the everyone's always okay all the time faces. You carry a very powerful message with you. And I think that nursing is going to be very blessed by it. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
All right. So guys, today we're going to be focusing our discussion on workplace culture in healthcare and how we can care for our caregivers. We're going to shift gears and talk later in the discussion about media portrayals and the public's perception of nursing. But I first want to start by getting to the core of your passion, Taylor, and just asking you to share your journey, your nursing journey up until this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. So I was a second career nurse. I did not have the confidence to go to college right out of high school. I had a lot of stuff going on when I was a kid, lots of trauma, and I was on my own since I was 16, and I just didn't have that faith in myself. And so I ended up I went to cosmetology school, and that was my first career. And through that time, I really gained a lot of confidence in myself. I started to believe maybe I can do this college thing. And I decided I was going to apply. And that was after meeting a very special woman who was diagnosed with cancer. And she was around the same age as me. She had a couple of kids. I also had 3 children. And her life was going to end. And for me to not invest in myself and to pursue the dream of becoming a nurse just didn't feel right. this poor woman who is going to pass away, leave her 2 children behind. It was really an inspiration for me to continue on with my education, reach my goals. And so I went to school with 3 children. I was pregnant for my 4th in the middle of schooling.
Wow.
And somehow, by the grace of God, I made it through the program, but not without lots of failing. And when I say failing, I say it with much celebration, because failing means that you're learning.
Awesome.
And failing means that you're improving who you are. So failing is something that's necessary for me in my life. So I ended up taking 5 years to complete my bachelor's degree in the science of nursing. And along that route, I met some people that were truly inspiring. And I knew I wanted to be in education and a leader. I didn't know exactly how it was going to unravel, but I knew that was set in stone for me. And as soon as I got into nursing, at the bedside, I was climbing the ranks relatively quickly and got into leadership. And I truly thought that leadership was going to be the space for me to create the change on the things I already saw that just didn't feel like it was a good culture within healthcare for what we do as nurses.
Yeah.
And so I did get into leadership, and that's kind of when my burnout started. And then I got into education. But yeah, I was an oncology nurse leader, a big department, wonderful team.
Yeah.
I was just really blessed to be part of that team. It really helped grow me as an individual, professionally and personally.
Awesome. So you talked about when your burnout started. Can you expand on, kind of your own personal experience with burnout, toxic workplace cultures, and things like that?
Yeah. So, I want to say this with compassion. I don't think any organization sets out to be toxic.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're like, let's get into work today and let's be toxic and ruin the environment. I just don't believe that. I have to assume positive intent. But what I think we have as far as the culture within healthcare is a naiveness, ignorance in a positive manner, right? You just don't know what you don't know. And I don't think that administratively we understand what the nurse is really all about and what our role is, speaking about role and how we're portrayed. I don't know that administration truly has, and I don't want a blanket statement, not all of administration, but I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
And they don't understand the bedside nurse. And then the bedside nurse thinks it's all about the money and doesn't understand the CEO. And there's this role confusion.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to what we have as toxic culture, a toxic environment, because the top is asking, I don't want to say the bottom, but the top is asking for us to do more, do more, do more. And our voices don't feel like they're being heard because we can't do more. We're so overworked and overburdened. And the one area that I think nurses need to take accountability for is boundaries and values. I think, and that's hard for us because we care so much about our patients and we care so much about providing excellent care and holding the hands of, patients as they pass and holding their hands as they get a terminal illness or a trauma comes in and there's a baby in an ED bed. There's all these things that I don't think people understand that we go through. And I think it's important for us to do our own values work. Like I embed that in my course for Introduction to Nursing. We do values work. And I do it specifically because I think when you can identify what your values are, you can create boundaries. And that helps us stay healthy.
Absolutely.
And that's when my life changed. I was in grad school. I was a nursing leader and I was taking a leadership class, and it was the best class I had ever taken.
Yes.
I had to read the book by Brene Brown, Dare to Lead. I'm actually hosting a book club for leaders.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because it was so impactful to me that I'm like, we got to bring this out there to leaders.
Absolutely.
So as a leader, when I was going through that and I identified what my values were, I realized part of my burnout was my fault. I had to take responsibility and accountability for that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any values and I didn't have any boundaries. And so I would work 6 hours, 7 hours during the day, be asked to go home to sleep and come back and work a 12-hour shift with 5 patients, be in charge, and I'm running an entire department.
Wow.
And, I thought, well, this is an expectation. And truly, I think it was the expectation. If I had said no, I don't know if I would have stayed employed there. I don't know if they would have kept me if I put boundaries up. And that's when I realized, okay, this is no longer in alignment with my morals and my values, and I need to leave because I can't serve this team the way they deserve to be served.
Absolutely.
If I'm completely burnt out.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was a grieving process for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, so you've been at the bedside and you've been in leadership, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about kind of how we bridge that gap and what we want CEOs to know about nurses at the bedside, how they can support them, and vice versa, what we want the nurses to know about the CEO. But something that you mentioned was boundaries. I think that is so important. How do young nurses and even more seasoned nurses, but I want to talk specifically to young nurses because I think that they feel they have to accept any and every kind of treatment or work condition, and they don't have much of a choice. Mm-hmm. How can they set those boundaries very early on in the game, like when you first get employed, or, how can they approach that topic in a very sort of respectful way and it's balanced on both parties?
That's such a I want to say loaded question because there's so many different facets, and I don't believe that it falls solely on that new nurse.
Yeah.
It is our responsibility as leaders and administrative leaders to advocate for these nurses because, for instance, I right now have an 18-year-old in one of my classes. She will be 20 when she becomes a nurse. Maybe not. I think she's going to be 19 because she did 2 years of college in her high school. It's very, very common thing down in Florida. And while she is an amazingly stellar student, there's concern. She's young. Like, our brains aren't even fully developed yet, right? Like, what are our priorities? Like, what do we want to do in life? We're not even really sure. And so it's up to us as leaders to instill this and do this work with these young nurses. So I don't necessarily believe that it falls solely on them. And so the one thing that I will say to any nurse, you need to hold your power. You are interviewing that organization. They are not interviewing you. We are in high demand as nurses. They will hire you, and it doesn't matter if you did great on your interview or you didn't do well on your interview. But we need to interview the organizations and be sure that the culture speaks to mentoring me as a new nurse. What are you going to do for me to help me? And I think that's the trouble that we're in because we have young nurses who don't necessarily know how to set those boundaries and do these things. They're being taken advantage of by administratives, or I shouldn't even say that. They are being taken advantage of, but I think it's because we also have leaders with no leadership experience leading departments because, the state of healthcare. That was me too. Like, I was looking up to all these leaders when I was a new leader. And it didn't feel like I was doing the right thing, but everybody above me was like, no, this is the right thing. You should do it like this. You should do it like this. And it wasn't until I said, screw that, I'm doing my own thing, that I really saw change on my department.
Wow.
And that was really just because I cared about my people and I talked to them like they were human. Like, you talk about raw and authentic. Like, I just was like, I'm just like you. We are colleagues. There is no hierarchy here. Like, I'm going to go in that room and clean that patient up with you.
I love that.
Like, I'm going to come in early and pass meds and like building trust and helping them to feel seen.
Yeah.
So, it's a really big question that we have to do a lot of things for, but I think that's where doing your work as a leader and having administration hire people to come in and really do some really thoughtful work with leadership so we can mentor the next generation. The only other thing I want to add to that is that this generation is not messing around.
They're not.
We have about 46%, I think was the last data point that I looked at. 46% of new nurses are leaving the profession. Within 2 years.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is they're not taking it, but they're also not facing it and using their voice. And that's why I've developed Rise and Restore. Yeah. Because we need to collectively bring these folks together and say, let's not leave. Let's just make the damn change.
Yeah. I think you put, was that you that put the post on LinkedIn that said nurses are not leaving their patients. They're leaving they're leaving
Melissa Mills.
Yeah. I read that
Excellent post.
yesterday, and they said they're not leaving their patients. They love their patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't go into nursing, I don't know, to just because you don't like your patients or you don't like people. You go in because you have a heart to care for, you have a heart of compassion.
Yeah.
But when they are tired, they're like, deuces. I know nurses can do all kinds of things. We can be in all kinds of arenas. We're not dealing with this. We're gone. So I think what you're doing is important because very soon we're going to be so short on bedside nurses because everyone is like, I have 4 years of, all this clinical training. I don't need to do this. I can do something else somewhere else. And I feel like the healthcare system will crumble if that continues to be the case.
It's so scary.
Yeah, it's in their best interest, in everyone's best interest that their healthcare workers and the caregivers are taken care of. So
and again, I do believe like there's positive intent. Like I said this recently, the CEO has a job. Their job is to make sure the bottom line shows a positive, dollar amount. They're thinking from a business standpoint, how can I make this facility make dollars?
Yes.
And I get that, but we just need to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And we need to say, okay, listen, and there's so much to it, like the commission for nurse reimbursement, how we're paid is wrapped into our room rate, right? Absolutely. So that always puts the squeeze on nursing because it's the area they think that they can squeeze the most to get positive revenue. And so there's just so much that we need to do. And instead of leaving the bedside, I said this to my students, instead of those 50% or 46% of the people that left the bedside, why don't they just join Rise and Restore and let's just make the changes so they can continue to follow their passion and care for patients.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned the CEO quite a number of times. And I think that because it feels like there's such a disconnect, one part of healthcare doesn't understand the other, right? When you were in leadership, did you find that many of your colleagues there were nurses or had any healthcare experience or backgrounds?
In administration?
In administration.
Yeah. So, we had a lot of people. And so here's the other thing too. And again, I don't believe there's blame in one space. I'm obviously very passionate about the nurse tribe. Like the nurse tribe is who I'm fighting for. But I think that when you become a CNO, I think I had an excellent CNO, but I think she was under a tremendous amount of pressure. And I believe that in healthcare, we have a culture from the top down. If you don't deliver, you're going to get fired and walked out. And so the amount of pressure that we have on our nursing administration, middle management, I understood the top, but I really understood the bottom. And you can't possibly bridge that gap alone because again, I feel, and this is just my personal experience, but I feel like there's so much pressure that you're going to get fired. And I guess now I can stand in my power and I can say, well, fire me. Now I'm just loud and proud about it. And I'm going to talk about my experience and maybe I'm wrong, but this is my experience and you can't take that away from me. Absolutely. And so I really, truly believe that there is that disconnect. But we have to eliminate the toxic culture of if I don't do what this person wants me to do, I'm going to get fired. I believe that that's a real problem.
Absolutely.
So I think the nurse cares, but they feel the pressure.
Yeah, for sure. And again, bridging that gap is like the high point of what you're saying, because when each part is able to walk in the other's shoes, it kind of creates more empathy, more compassion. And action-driven steps too. It's not just, the nurses do this. If you don't really understand that they're under so much stress, such high demand, such high, just high stress altogether, you're not really thinking and putting yourself in their shoes. People think, they're just sitting in their high offices, high horses over there, doing whatever. They don't know what we go through. How do we bridge the gap? How do we make the CEO and the leadership understand the nurses and vice versa?
I think that we should spend a week in their shoes at the very least. It should be part of, if I was a CEO, I'd probably be so unpopular. If I was a CEO,
You'll
from
never
the
be in your
administrative.
office.
Yeah, I would
And
never
I'm
be
like,
in my
Nurse
office.
Taylor, she's gone
Never be
again.
in my
She's on the
office.
med-surg unit.
But you know what? This is my belief. My belief is if you pour yourself into the people, the numbers will show.
100%.
So I wouldn't be in my office unless I absolutely had to be, but I would be out there with my leaders, with environmental services. I would be helping I would be with patients. How is your day today? I'm the CEO. Could you imagine a patient saying like the CEO came to see me today?
I met the CEO today.
Yeah, like I met the
Ratings
CEO
would
today.
be
He
like
was rounding. He was
Yeah.
rounding on me. Like instead of it's the nurse leader's job to do all the rounding. Well, yes, that's important, but the nurse leader's pouring herself into her nursing staff as well. And yes, they have to round. But I think it's really important in order for us to bridge the gap for the CEO to be more involved in what's actually happening with the people in the biggest sector of healthcare that are doing the work. Get to know them.
Yeah.
What are they missing? How many workarounds are they doing because the scanner stopped working, because pharmacy didn't label something correctly? How many times are they picking up the phone to make things right? And on top of making sure that the call bell gets answered within 2 minutes, or Prestini scores are going to go down, or, there's just so many things that we can do so we can see the nurse. And that's really why I started the podcast too. Nurse Unseen. I want to exploit the things. Maybe exploit is a negative word, but sure. I want people to see what is going on in nursing, to better see us so we can get people to back us up. And then on the reverse, I think it's really important for the nurse to go sit with the CEO.
Yeah.
And sit at a board of directors meeting and hear about the bottom line, because the bottom line is when we're at home and we're doing our own budgets, we care about how much money is coming in and how much money we have to pay out. Absolutely. It's no different in the hospital. Yeah. And we need that money coming in to get reinvested in the people doing the work. Yeah. So honestly, it's really pairing them up. There's TV shows. We should do one for healthcare. Yeah, sure. There's TV shows where they switch spots and they get to know each other. You found a whole new level of respect when you.
All right, we're pitching that, Taylor.
Let's do it.
We're pitching it.
Nursing on purpose, healthcare on purpose.
Yes, let's put that. No, but I think that's such a great thing. It humanizes the CEO, right?
Yes, he or she is human.
Yeah, it does, because people feel, he's this big bad wolf, or she is, and they don't care nothing about us. But you don't really know how much is riding on their shoulders, right? Yeah. So on both ends, there should be empathy, and I love that. So Taylor, how would you describe a healthy workplace, a healthy work culture in healthcare for nurses? If you could just create your own utopia, how would you describe that?
I can describe it with a story. My first year in nursing, I worked with a spectacular CNO. And I don't remember things being bad my first year. My very first year was the best year that I ever had in nursing. Wow. I worked the night shift. We were not overworked. We were able to have fun and be serious. And you know what I mean? It was just great. But one of the things that stuck with me, there's two things. The CNO would round quarterly on night shift. And she would come around with the vice president. And they would both come around and bring fruit, which I thought was nice because it was healthy.
Absolutely. Tired of the pizza.
She'd get on the unit and she'd say, "Hey, Taylor, how's grad school going?" Wow. She knew my name. She knew I was in grad school. To be seen, that is what I believe. I'm getting the chills.
My goodness.
I believe that that's a positive culture, to be seen as the nurse doing the work. I really believe that that's so important. And then that same department that I was on, it was my first nursing job, it was a ortho neuro trauma unit. And I had my leader, her name was Elizabeth. She's still a mentor to me today. She actually just reached out to me and she said, "Hey, there's this great leadership position in Florida. You want it?" And I'm like, it's not the right time. I'm a nurse entrepreneur and I'm trying to change the world. But I decided I was going to leave the department. I had 5 babies now. So my 5th baby, I ended up having preeclampsia, HELLP syndrome, almost died. I was at a big hospital. I was on bed rest. I had the NICU experience with my baby. And I said, I think I want to be a NICU nurse.
Wow.
And in my hormonal state, I quit my job and decided I was going to go be a NICU nurse. And you know what? She sent me a card to my house. And she said, she wishing me the best. And then if I ever needed anything, that she'd always be there for me. And again, like that is just another one of those human touches where you are promoting growth. This was an ICU, you know, I mean, that was great. And she was promoting my growth, and we're still friends today. You know, like she's still one of my mentors today. And I feel like that she's also why I became a leader.
Wow.
She got me back from that other hospital to get into leadership at the first hospital. And so while she was a small piece of positivity for me in a positive culture way, the rest of the organization wasn't necessarily working that way. But I believe it's just spending time on the people, pouring yourself into the people. The numbers will work themselves out, but just be human and see the human that's showing up every day. I just believe that is what creates positivity. Know your people.
I love that. That is amazing. And you said it so well. People want to be seen. You know, people want to feel that they're valued, that they're important, that they're appreciated for the work that they do. And I think that a lot of those qualities are really where Nurse on Purpose is trying to take nursing, that we're seen in the media, that we're not just holding a clipboard and following the doctor around, that we are, you know, not just loud-mouthed, unintelligent, you know, sex symbols. We want to be seen. Imagine doing all that grunt work at work, working in the NICU, putting in all that effort, and then you settle into just, you know, whatever the night, and you want to watch a show, and then you see a nurse on TV and she is, oh, let me get the doctor for you. Oh, you know, and you're like, what? I just ran a whole rapid response and coded this patient. And you're like, that is so not me. So people may think that this is like a self-glorification thing. But no, it's not. We want to be seen. We want to be recognized for who we are. We're not saying that nursing is perfect by any means, or, you know, there aren't some aspects of nursing but that's with every profession, right? However, I think that the large majority of it is just not true. And it rubs a lot of nurses the wrong way. We're so cringed by it, but we're so busy in our personal, like you have 5, you know, we're so busy in our personal and professional lives that we just don't have the time to say, okay, we're going to fight this fight and do all this stuff. But I think it's about time that we really start to talk about it. And so I love the nurse unseen concept. We want to be seen. And, you know, that's really what it's all about. Yeah. Awesome. I love the answer. So a healthy workplace is where you feel seen. Absolutely.
I think just to kind of add to that, because I think it's important to recognize the suicide rates for the nursing industry. And, you know, we talk about it when we look at military and veterans, and I'm not minimizing that by any means, but it's just as high in nursing. And the male suicide rate is even higher. And so to be seen, how could being seen change those rates? You know what I mean? Like that to me is a serious problem, because not only are people leaving the profession, they're leaving the profession by suicide. And that is just like, you know, we have to pour into these people. Yeah,
absolutely. And self-care, you know, that's the second part of what we were talking about. So workplace culture and then self-care, very, very important. How can organizations sort of encourage that self-care among their staff, among their nurses, without it being seen as a luxury? What are some strategies that organizations can put in place to allow nurses some self-care?
Yeah, this is such a great question. There was recently a post I saw on LinkedIn from Rebecca Love. And she had done this like hackathon with leaders. And one of the things that they talked about was letting nurses sleep on night shift, because night shift is so short staffed. And I'm not sure how it would work. I'm not sure that I'm a fan of it, but I thought it was really innovative of how can we provide, because if you've ever worked a night shift, I mean, for the love, sometimes it is so brutal, and you're just like, I felt like I was delirious, like I was seeing funny, you know, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of throw that little caveat in there because I think it's really great that they're doing some work on like how can we increase the positivity, so to speak, on nights and the welfare of the nurse. But honestly, I think it's more, again, I'm going to go back to this, it's more about being seen and valued and heard and, asking the nurse what they need, asking the nurse, what are your values? Like my values are vulnerability and balance. Allow me to be vulnerable and be seen and share with you what I need. Like when are we asked what we need? When is that a question? On a survey, it's not even a question in there. And so I think that we need to be more intentional. One of the ways that I had used in the past as a leader was spiritual care. Spiritual care. I had a great relationship with the person that was assigned to our unit. His name's Mike. He's been on my podcast before, and for a non-nurse, I have never felt so seen by somebody who wasn't a nurse, because he just sat and listened, and he was there for us after codes. We did presentations at our staff meetings, and genuinely and truly, it's the same thing when a patient grieves. When a patient has a grievance, we can minimize that grievance just by taking accountability, hearing them, and apologizing. I think that so much of our problems can really be solved by seeing the individual. But that requires us to pour ourselves into those people. I think another thing that's really huge is don't reach out to people on their day off. Do not reach out to staff on their day off because you feel guilty. Oh my gosh, everyone's short tonight. Then another nurse messages you, things of that nature. Having, I think you and I talked about this. I am a huge fan of every nurse should be able to take an LOA at some point. They need to take some time. I think we should all have a special right to take some time off because the job is heavy. It doesn't matter what field you're in, the job is heavy. We see some really tragic things and we see them at a very young age. And so I think having time off, and I think always having resources. We should always have resources inside the building 24/7 that can help nurses and be there to intervene from them on a mental and emotional standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Here's what I've come across a lot, these like tech, Google, and I don't know, most of these big name tech companies that have like a gym in the building. They have a cafeteria, they have, access to like free lunches and stuff like that. And somebody was writing an article and they said, these people have access to all this stuff. And like during their lunch, they can just take a 30-minute walk on the treadmill, just etc., stuff like that. Why do nurses and why do healthcare organizations not have stuff like this? It's such a major perk, right? If somebody who is coming into an organization knows that they are being just as much cared for as they're coming to care for others. Like the people who are pouring themselves emotionally really need to have a lot of emotional support. Self-care is important, emotional support. I mean, they have all kinds of facilities. I'm like, well, y'all have a like sauna in your office. You don't need to pay for a gym membership. Wow. That's another innovative way to think about, caring for our caregivers, right? Like you said, maybe the night shift nurse can nap for an hour while other people cover and everyone takes turns. I've often, when I go to retail stores like Walmart or wherever, I don't know, any store where people are kind of selling and, there's a cashier, right? I'm like, why don't they let them sit when there's no one there? Just like have a high stool and let people sit down. They can't be standing for 8 hours or however many hours. And I sometimes I'll tell the cashier at Walmart, I'm like, why don't they give you guys chairs to sit, like high stools? I mean, you could very well ring somebody up sitting. You don't have to stand, right? I mean, if you need to bag, then it's fine. But there should be moments when they can just take a sit. And they're like, we don't know. We've talked about it to them, but like, we don't know why they don't do it. And I'm like, it's such a simple thing that would make such a difference, right? A lot of people that work there, some of them are elderly, some of them may have back issues, spine issues, just from standing for so many hours at a stretch. And it's not even necessary. But anyways, I think, we need to have leadership that supports and encourages self-care for nurses.
I think too, another avenue that I think is really important is looking at the structure in which we schedule our nurses. So when I was burnt out, I left that organization and I became an infusion nurse, and I worked in a small rural hospital. Best experience I had ever had. Learned, was very humbled by understanding what a rural hospital actually does and the amount of pressure that's on that nursing staff and team. But also one of the cool things was that they had 8-hour shifts.
Oh.
And I think, how could we just blanketly say 12-hour shifts for everybody, 3 shifts a week? You know, PRN is no longer PRN. It's holidays, weekends. It's like, I'd still be at the bedside if you let me work every Tuesday, 8-hour shift, 7 to 3.
Yeah.
You'd still have me there caring for patients, and I'd be giving great care. And I think that's another piece too, because, you know, having a gym at work, that, first of all, having not to pay for it is freaking amazing. But they feel like they don't have the time after a 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
And a 12-hour shift, let's just be real, is not 12 hours.
Yeah. Oh, no.
You know,
you're
it's
coming
much
in
longer
early,
than
you're
12
leaving
hours.
a little bit late. Yeah.
Correct. So let's just call it 14, to be honest, with traveling and like depending on where you live. And then you got to come back and do it the next night. So we're not set up to even pour into ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think looking at, and I'm not saying we should only be 8-hour shifts. I think that's the biggest thing people say. Well, I'm not a fan of that 8-hour thing. I'm not saying that we should be all 8. I'm saying 8s, 10s, 12s.
Yeah.
What works for you?
Yes.
What stage of life are you in? Are you a mama? And
you got to pick up your kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, are you a mama? Okay. Are you just out of college and you like want to work 4 shifts a week because you want dollars to go on vacation with your friends? Like, we have to cater towards who that person is. But first we have to ask them what they need.
Yeah.
And then we can create the changes. It's not about how can we make the most money and then let's get everybody in here and make them miserable. How can we make money, increase staff satisfaction and retention?
Absolutely. Now you are juggling all kinds of things, right? You're an educator, you are a mama, you're a wife, you're a podcaster, you're an entrepreneur. How do you juggle all of this? And how do you make time for your own self-care? What do you even do to take care of yourself, Taylor?
Good questions. Good question. So those that preach don't often do what they preach. Maybe I should say that.
She said it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to take accountability. I'm not always good at that. You know, I'm a really driven, passionate person. And honestly, I think for me, today, my last day lecturing with this group of students, and the amount of hugs that I got after, that's my self-care. Like, I get emotional just thinking about it. The thank you so much. Thank you for talking me off the ledge. Thank you for being passionate, reading my reviews. She's passionate. She really taught us about policy and getting involved. Like, I have the chills because that feeds me. That makes me feel good. And so we also have to think, what is self-care? And I have redefined self-care as rise and restore. So rising to the occasion where we need to take accountability for our actions and restore ourselves, because it really is not anyone else's responsibility. Absolutely. And in order to do that, we have to stand up and we have to have boundaries. So yes, I'm a very busy mama, but honestly, 3 of my kids are adults. My son is going to be 27 in January. And then
no one's ever going to believe you.
I'll take it.
No one's take it. You, just so you know.
I love it.
You can keep saying it, but
my daughter is 23. Then I have a 19-year-old daughter who's coming down here to go to college where I'm teaching currently. I'm so excited to have her here. And then I have a 13 and a 7-year-old. So they keep me busy, those 2 little ones. And I have an amazing husband who I told him, I said, listen, I'm going to resign from work. I have no idea how I'm going to make money, but I just know that I'm meant to do this work with Rise and Restore, and the money will come. Same thing. If you pour yourself into the people, the culture changes. So if I pour myself into this project that I know that I was born to do, the money will come. And it's not like I'm trying to get rich off of supporting nurses. Absolutely. I just want to do that for my job because it's what feeds my soul. I mean, I've resigned from my teaching position. I will only do clinical in next semester. So that's going to alleviate some time. And now moving forward, I have a big plan. I got a plan of dropping my babies off in the morning to school and coming home. I have a track where I live. I'm going to do my hour walk, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to get to work. And getting to work is changing the culture of nursing.
I love that. I love it.
So, I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'll tell you right now, what keeps me going is the little messages of people saying, thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you for, like that keeps me going, because it's like, okay, we need this. I'm getting confirmation that I'm doing the right thing and people are joining me to do this.
You are doing the right thing. You've risen to the occasion. And I know that, just keep going, just keep pushing. Some days it's not going to be easy. You're not going to feel like getting up to do it, but
you caught me on that day last week. Remember?
Yeah.
I was ready to lose my mind, and I ended up posting it on LinkedIn. And you know what? People received it well.
Yeah,
it's like, let's just be real, people. Every day is not LinkedIn ready.
Girl, you are doing God's work. I'll tell you, because we need voices, and we need a lot of them. One person, by themselves can't do all the work. It'll just like wear them out. So a community, bringing people together, a call to action. What you're doing is absolutely amazing. And like you said, if you do the work, if you pour your heart into it, the finances and everything else will follow, right? But if you make the financial piece your major focus without seeing the heart of people, seeing what they want, you'll crash and burn when things become difficult, So I really do applaud you. And anyone listening to your voice can literally hear the passion. They can literally hear the love that you have for this profession. And you feel for, taking care of the souls of nurses, making sure that we're not leaving the bedside, but we're actually embracing what we love, because the work culture is so good, taking care of ourselves and things like that. Okay, so we are going to shift gears and talk a little bit more about the media part, of nursing. Do you watch any shows? If you do, or if you don't, what is your opinion about nursing portrayals in the media?
I have a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
I absolutely am a Grey's Anatomy guru. I watch it over and over and over. I'll be grading papers and I have an earbud in and I'm listening to it. Okay? With that said, everything that you see is what the nurses are doing. Other than in surgery, we're not cutting into brains, but they're walking patients and pushing IV meds. And I'm like, please. It just absolutely kills me, because I'm like, that is a nurse's job. My husband thinks that that's what doctors do. He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's what I do. That's what I'm doing. Other than cutting into brains and hearts, I'm not doing that. But there's nurses there too.
Or
they're
running
pushing
clothes.
The meds. Yes. The doctor. Oh, please. The doctor doing the compressions. And where's the nurses at? So I love that show. It's like a guilty pleasure, but I've watched it ever since the beginning. But I do not love how we are not even really
seen. We're not seen.
Even portrayed in there. We are not seen.
Yeah.
We are not seen.
That's right. Yeah. Somebody was, one of my mentors, pioneer in this media work, was saying that she reached out to a media house and she wanted to, pitch a story about nurses and their role in the hospital. And the producer sent her back a message to say that nursing jobs are just not dramatic enough. They're not, they're not. You almost spit your coffee out. That they're not dramatic enough. Nobody wants to watch nursing. And I was like, excuse me, all the stuff that you're portraying in the biggest dramas, that's nursing work. You're just not portraying nurses doing them. And that was precisely her response to them. But I think that we're not there. We don't have a powerful voice in entertainment that's strong enough to really move or shift things. And I think that's what the issue is. Physicians have their stake in entertainment and policy, in all the key stakeholders of that make decisions in our society. But nurses haven't yet found that. And I think that's where we need to start from, so that we can truly start to make a difference. So I love that response, because it was precisely what the producer said. We don't do anything. What are we doing that who wants to see that what we're doing? We're just changing webcams. Yeah, right.
I know, literally, that's what my husband has thought, and I'm like, okay, like
Yeah.
he and I will go, like, I'm just like,
No.
no, you don't even understand. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, I think about this a lot because I often wonder why we aren't louder as a profession. Like, why are we not louder? There's so many of us, and we all see each other. We all know the trials and the tribulations. Why are we not louder? And I get frustrated a little bit about it. And it's something I think about so often. I don't know. I feel like we don't necessarily want to talk about all of the things that happened that are negative. Like, we don't want to talk about how we coded somebody. Like, it's looked at on TV so differently than what it really feels like inside when you've lost a patient. When, you see a patient that doesn't get any visitors, and then, like, you're coding them and they die, and like nobody's there to like see them. Like, there's just so much weight to what we do, all of the things that we do, that like, who wants to continually relive that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I think that's part of it. But also I wonder, I'm curious, does HIPAA have something to do with it? Because we are afraid to speak about the situations because it's been ingrained in who we are, that we can't share our stories because it's a HIPAA violation. Yeah. And so those are just some things that I'm curious about, and things I really want to start asking the tribe that has joined Rise and Restore is like, tell me what you're afraid of too. Like, are you afraid to lose your job? What are the fears to sharing our voice? There's something there. And I've hypothesized that it's a lack of hope. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm just really, really curious about that. But yeah, I don't think we're portrayed the way we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? We are coming to the end of our time together, but there are two other things that I do want to do. First, I want you to talk more about Rise and Restore. What exactly you're doing, how people can get involved, and things like that.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I opened up my own business as a coach, Taylor-Paige Coaching, LLC. And from there, I founded Rise and Restore, a movement for nurses. And I want to just say that it intuitively kind of came to me. Like, I still don't know all the things that we're going to accomplish in this tribe. But I knew that we needed a movement and that we needed a collective voice everywhere, not just in one state, not in just one hospital. We needed it collectively. Yeah. And so for Rise and Restore Movement for Nurses, I'm looking for people to join the tribe. And in January, we're going to start launching bi-weekly calls. They're free for anyone who wants to join that's in the nursing discipline, to talk about really like, well, what's going on? First of all, what do you need to share so you can be seen, and how can this tribe support you? Right? So like a free way for people to share their stories, be seen, get validated, get some love, some support. And then I also want to have guest speakers like Melissa Mills, Rebecca Love, to share on a policy level, how can we unite this tribe, this massive tribe from all over the country? What can we do on a political level? And how can we create some change? And, the thing about nurses is that we're all pretty strongly opinionated, I think. And some people may agree with some things and some people may not. And I really want to create the culture in Rise and Restore where if it's not your jam and this isn't something that you want to change, that's okay. What do you want to change? And how can I connect you with the person who's doing that somewhere else? And really, so it's like really exposing what we can do from a policy level, because I learned through leadership and education, the only way that I'm going to make change is with a tribe and on a political level. And so really bringing in some policy, but also supporting our nurses that are burnt out, preventing the burnout, giving them a space to be seen. I'm going to host a retreat, an all nurses retreat in May. I'm looking for sponsors if anyone's interested. And, I just think we need to collectively unite and share our voice and just support each other. And I'm so, so excited for this community. We're on Facebook is the main area that I'm trying to kind of gather everybody for now. Facebook, if you look up Rise and Restore Movement for Nurses, you can join. You have to be in the nursing discipline to join. I'm on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
I'm on TikTok. You can just rise and restore. It's usually rise and restore TPRN. That way it's Taylor-Paige nurse. So that's the rise and restore movement. And I really just want it to be our voice, not just my voice. Absolutely. What I want to see change doesn't mean that I'm right. It's collectively, what do we want to rise to the top and nail that down first?
Absolutely. And I think when people start speaking up, you'll be surprised at just how much stuff people really want to change. Encouraging people to talk about what they want to change from the very thing that they feel is mundane to the bigger policy stuff. As nothing is too little. If you have anything in your heart that you're like, I really wish this would be different. It could be a student nurse. It could be something with, academia. It could be all kinds of things. I don't know if nursing students are also invited to be part of this.
Yes.
So nursing students, nurses at every level are invited to be a part of this, because this is really going to be a game changer. Right?
I hope so. That's the goal. I'm not giving up. And the nursing students, there is, so I am an NCLEX student success coach. And so I coach students how to manage the tough spots in nursing school. When I first started that position, I was kind of like, this is going to be so awesome. I'm going to get to support these nursing students, because I was one of those, I was not so good. And, I feel like I want to just give back to those people who are not so great academically, but they're going to be amazing nurses.
Absolutely.
And, I've seen how I've unfolded. I don't know what the word is, but I've noticed that there's a lot of problems in academia, that we're teaching our nurses how to burn out before we're conditioning them to burn out before they even get to nursing. We're burning them out in school. It's so ridiculous, the amount of pressure. I'm not saying nursing should be easy, but I'm saying, can we please teach them in school the values and the boundaries so that they can make it after 2 years? So I created a Rise and Restore student nurse launchpad, where that's a paid membership space, but it's they have academic support as well as wellness. So we're going to go through those values, test anxiety, all of that side of things to help support them from a mental health and emotional standpoint.
Wow, you are a powerhouse. We start talking and then you throw out something else that you're doing.
I know. Well, listen, I can't do this. It's not all going well right now, but it will be once I'm done my job, because now I'm going to have all this time to dedicate to my passion.
That is perfectly fine. The important thing is to begin. Once you begin, things start to unfold. People will gravitate towards somebody who is doing, who is in motion, right? Versus just talking about the idea and kind of too scared to leap. But once you start moving, you'll see that there are so many other people who were just waiting for you to emerge. And they were like, where was this all my life? And then you're that person that's guiding and being the light to them. So it's awesome. And I thank you for telling people where they can find you, your website, your LinkedIn, your Facebook. Guys, this is one nurse entrepreneur that you don't want to miss. You want her in your corner, because she will empower you. She will encourage you. If you want to be uplifted, she's the one, right? She has such a great energy about her, and it's all about positive vibes, right? And vulnerability and openness. And I think that's something that drew me to you. So I really appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you helping to elevate our voice by having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate
My
that.
pleasure. All right, we're going to have some fun. Are you ready?
I like it. Yes.
Okay, guys. So this is our segment where we turn you into your own show producer or TV producer, whatever the case is. With me, I have a jar, and in this jar contains several pieces of paper with different genres of shows, movies, all kinds of things, even children's books, everything, all written in here. I'm going to shake it, and I'm going to pick one. And when I read the category, you turn into a producer, right? You're going to tell me the synopsis of your own show that has a nurse or nurse lead. Okay, are you ready?
I love it.
All right, let's go. Shake. Let me close my eyes because no cheating here. All right, I think I picked 2. Oh, okay. So your category is medical drama.
Okay. Medical drama. Okay. So I think I'm going to go with something that we kind of already talked about, which was swapping places. You know, like having that CNO, or the CNO or the CEO. I want to have them swap. I know that they can't push meds and do all those things that a nurse can do. But what if they just have to get in scrubs and they have to be following the nurse around, or they're the CNA for the day? They got to answer call bells and do whatever they can within their being. Like if they can get some ginger ale, they can go get some crackers, they can help somebody up to the bathroom. I would love to see that. But I would also love to see the nurse step into that administrative role and just see a day in the CEO's life and vice versa. I think it'd be so cool to see.
That would be so cool.
And I think it would help us from a culture perspective.
Oh, wow. ABC, I hope you're listening.
Yeah.
So this show will air at 9 p.m. every Wednesday.
Could you imagine though? What nurse would not tune in to see the CEO in scrubs at the bedside?
Oh my goodness, I love that. Because people will be like, yeah, I told you, when they're having a hard time. You're like, see, that's why we want to make this change. Yeah.
The CEO's watching Grey's Anatomy probably too, and they don't even know what the nurses do.
No, they don't. It's the physicians do everything. That's
XO to all my CEOs. I love you guys. I'm with you, but I'm with my nurses too.
Yes. We're for both. We're for both parties. We want each other. We want them to see each other. That's what it is. I've so enjoyed talking to you, Taylor. I'm so glad that you've been here. Guys, give it up to my guest. She's been so fabulous, so amazing. Thank you for the love that you are pouring into the lives of nurses. We do really need to care for our caregivers. I think that it's a revolution. And it will change, it will change the profession positively when we really feel seen and heard. So thank you again for being here. It's been my pleasure to host you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this episode. And we will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for hanging with me till the end. I hope you gained some valuable insight into the world of nursing. If today's episode inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear about the amazing work nurses are doing. Let's keep breaking stereotypes and reshaping the narrative together. I'll see you next time.